the key to going from good to great is obsessing on product greatness.
100%.
What if someone, they have any product, a physical product, digital product, coaching, a software, and they're watching or listening, what should they be thinking about to making the product that much better? They've put a lot of time and energy launching it, building it, they've got sales, maybe they've had it for a year or two. How do they break it all down? And is it 20 different factors? Is it like just do these 3 things and it's going to improve the quality of your product? What should they think about?
It's a really good question. So there's like 3 different angles I want to take this. So one is like what I talked about in the book, which is like the value equation. So
what is that?
So there's 4 variables in the value equation. The first one is the dream outcome, which is the thing that I'm delivering fundamentally valuable? And this is especially for people probably more so who are trying like starting out in their like entrepreneurial career.
You want to draw it out for me too if you want to.
Sure.
Well, I'll hold it up for people.
Yeah. So you've got your dream outcome. So I'll just put dream here, right? You've got dream outcome, which is the first variable. The second variable is the perceived likelihood of achievement. And so the idea is, and I'll give you an example of this. If you have, let's say you wanted to get plastic surgery, whatever. And
is that what you did with your calves?
That's exactly what I did. If you wanted to get plastic surgery and you had the option of 2 guys who are going to do the surgery, one guy has done 10,000 surgeries and one guy is fresh out of medical school, this is his first surgery, which guy would you go with? Probably 10,000. It might even take this guy half the time to do the surgery as this guy.
And so, double the price.
Right. Yeah. So we might, and it's double the price. Why? Because of the perceived likelihood of achievement. We believe that when we pay this man, we are more likely to achieve what we want. Even though the work is the same, probably longer on this side, but our perception of what we're going to get in a real way increases prior to purchase, which is the same reason that if you have like 20 people who told you that this restaurant is amazing, you're willing to pay way more, even though you haven't experienced it yet. Because it's the perceived likelihood of getting the outcome. To rewind on the dream outcome, this is more a commentary that how is it that you have a 50,000, you can solve the same problem, let's say weight loss, because everybody understands that one. If I'm trying to help somebody lose weight, there's $50,000 solutions and there's $5 solutions. There's free solutions, right? $50,000 solutions, you can get liposuction, right? And get a full body lift and whatever.
Done in a day.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you can get an ebook, for $5. So the question is, why are these 2 things, more valuable? And that again goes to perceived achievement. But if I went from the weight loss to, let's say, making money, if I had 2 things, in general, all the things in the making money category will be priced higher because there's a more direct ROI.
Yes.
So that's why between categories, dream outcome as a category can be higher or lower. But then once you're within a category, it's the other 3 variables. So perceived likelihood of achievement is number 1 of the other 3 variables. The next variable is underneath, which is the time delay. So between when I pay and when I get, what's my delay there, right? So if I were to say, using the weight loss example, if you swipe your credit card and then you look down at your stomach and you just have abs, how valuable?
We'll pay a lot for that.
Exactly. And all we did was just decrease the time delay. And so if, let's say in a B2B example, if you had a marketing agency, for example, and normally it's like, okay, you guys need to send me all this creative and we got to get everything spun up and it's going to take us, 45 days to really get everything, ramp. We got to build a funnel and handle it, blah, 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 right? And then let's do a different example. We're on the same call. The guy says, cool, we're going to get you going. And you hang up the phone and your phone rings with a prospect.
That's pretty big.
Even if it's the exact same thing, 45 days from now, your phone rings with the prospect. Today, your phone rings with the prospect. How different is the perception of value? Phenomenally different, which is why the time delay is such a huge piece, which is why time to value, we're referencing earlier, is such a huge part of increasing the perceived value of the product. And so that's the time delay.
That's the third.
Yep. And then the fourth one is effort and sacrifice. And so effort and sacrifice are 2 sides of the same coin. So effort, as I define it, are things that you must begin doing that you do not want to do, that you did not have to do prior to the purchase.
Give me an example.
If I have to wake up early to go to the gym, that would be effort. That is something that I now have to do, that I do. And so sacrifice I use as the equal opposite, which is what do I have to stop doing that I want to do, that I would continue doing if I didn't have to.
Stop eating milkshakes at midnight or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. And even in the B2B example with the marketing agency, well, now what do I have to do? I have to start making this content. I have to start hopping on meetings every week. We have to start looking over these metrics. Like
to hire new people.
Right. And so oftentimes, especially like businesses, they think that their price is the most expensive thing that they have in the cost, and it's not. So think about this. If you've ever asked someone, hey, I'll give you my service for free, and they said no, it's because there are other costs that you're not taking into consideration, which also means a lot of times your price has far more wiggle room in it than you think it does. And if you can decrease a much bigger hidden cost, by asking for more money and you can solve a hidden cost, you can make more money and improve their experience at the same time.
Right.
And that's when you just make oodles and oodles of money.
When does someone know? So this is the good to great concept, right? What we should be focusing on is kind of this main analogy and factor. When does someone understand? A lot of people talk about their worth. Like, I'm worth this, I deserve this, whether they're an employee or they're an entrepreneur and they want to price something.
Yeah.
When should they be thinking about their worth and increasing their rates, whether as an employee or as an entrepreneur? How do they know? Because you're only worth what people are willing to pay. So how do you get people to pay what you believe you're worth?
So I think there's 3 variables that come into like how much you can charge, right?
Okay.
The first one is value or perceived value from the prospect.
Perceived value, yeah.
So perceived value. The second one is how good you are at negotiating, which would become, which I put that, or persuading, you could probably put that as just persuasion in general.
That's a
good,
because
if it's a job, you might be negotiating.
Sure.
If it's a customer, you might be negotiating too, but it's persuasion in general.
And that's a whole skill to develop on its own.
100%. And the third one is how unique it is. So that there's no easy alternative, right? And so if, like, for example, let's say I provide something that's really valuable, unbelievable at selling.
Rare.
And then another guy is willing to just do all the same stuff for just less.
Right.
Right. And so it's being decommoditized, which I talk about in the book too, is that people have to be able to, they cannot, and the goal should be with our services that we have, that no one can hold up our service and somebody else's and say, these two are similar enough, I'll pick the cheaper one. And so the goal is, how can we differentiate ourselves in enough ways by looking at the value equation and thinking, what are all the things that are making this take longer and how can I remove them? What are all the efforts and sacrifices, even these micro things, these nuances that make things more difficult? And so like the kings of this, if you look at like Amazon, right? Like the biggest companies in the world, I'll reverse. The small companies that are out there, they always focus on the first 2 things. Let me promise something really big. Let me show you all these testimonials, and that's all they do. Just promote these things. It's amazing. Listen to Sammy. It's amazing. Listen to Tommy, right? That's all they do. But the biggest companies in the world focus on the bottom side of the equation, which is how can we make things faster and how can we make things more effortless? Like Netflix destroyed Blockbuster, not because they fundamentally changed the product at all. All they did was they made it happen immediately and from the comfort of your home. Right? And so they just dramatically decreased the cost and effort that was associated with watching movies, and boom, they blew up.
Right.
And so, like Jason Fladley, who's a friend, he said, you know, one of the easiest business models in the world is just look at what everyone else is doing and do it in half the time. Right? Like that's, it's a simple. Like people are like, what do I do for business? Just look what, like, if someone like can cut your lawn in whatever amount of time, or you clean houses. Say you can clean houses in less time because it's just less inconvenience when you're there in their house.
Less time and less money, or same money?
Same money.
Yeah.
Or more money. Right. You know, like it depends on what are the hidden costs. So like probably like with cleaning, what are all the things that people hate? Scheduling is probably a pain.
Right.
Hearing the noise is probably a pain. Like silent cleaners.
Right.
Right? Like what are, like you list this out, and that's, we outline that in the book of like the process of thinking through this, but like what are all the pains and problems that your customers complain to you about? And so like the gold is always in the support tickets. So when you talk about like obsessing about a customer, right? It's let's go through all the comments on the videos, right? Let's go through all of the support tickets that are coming in, and those complaints, inside of the complaints, sure, like what you don't want to do is say like, well, these guys are all victims, because then you lose all the power as a business owner by just blaming them. So if you just accept all of it as like, these are all like, as long as the thing that they're saying is not false, if it's unreasonable, then let's see if we can figure it out. Right. Maybe no one else has figured out how to do this, but we might as well try.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think if you can approach it with like very open hands of like when you accept the feedback, it gives you the gold to really create huge breakthroughs in products and services.
Were you always open to the feedback from customers?
No.
But when did you learn to be like, when did you learn to be like, okay, this sounds like a victim conversation, but there's something here where this person's struggling, and if I can make it more effortless, it's going to be a better product for that person.
I think it's just taken time, and I think it's because I think a lot of it I think is really beating down your ego, and I think like in a lot of ways with business, in my opinion, ego is the enemy, because it gives us too much confidence when we don't deserve it.
When did you start beating down your ego?
I mean, I've been trying to do it since I was 19. It's just been a very slow process. I just realized that it was the root of all the unhappiness that I had, and like everything that I had was in comparison to other people for no reason. And like, you know, I've obviously adopted some perspectives we'll probably get into later, but that are contrarian in nature in terms of like how we live, but not just there's no benefit to ego. There's just none. And then I have a different thing that I've been thinking about recently. I'm excited to share it with you.
Sure. Yeah.
So you've probably heard this, but there's a lot of evidence that points to, with mitochondrial DNA, that we go back to like one woman birthed. Like the mitochondrial DNA of all humans tracks back to one woman, right? And so I think that that's interesting within the context of legacy, because people talk about legacy and they want to leave something for their progeny. And we love our sideways family members, right?
What do you mean?
Like like your
current family.
Yeah, exactly. But like, if we all came from the same mitochondrial DNA, right? Then we, not to be like weird and huggy lovey, but like
family members.
100%.
Yeah, of course.
I find that really fascinating. It's just like, it's like a super distant cousin. And
This is why when I met you for the first time.
Yeah.
What did I do when I met you?
Deep long hug.
Deep long hug.
Oh yeah.
And I do this with
It was a triple hug.
It was a triple because
Yeah.
you broke it. You broke it. I was like, no, bring it in, bro.
And at the end,
and then you had to surrender. And there's a reason I do that is because.
Oh, that's the thing? I didn't know that was the thing.
I mean, unless it's somewhere where it's like maybe someone who's older that doesn't want to be hugged, or your wife, I'm going to give a quicker hug. I'm not going to be grabbing someone. Yeah, but it's it's a respectful, understanding the human being in front of you, doing your best to respect it. But with you, I knew I could just hug you, and it's going to make you uncomfortable.
Oh.
And it's going to make you uncomfortable, but for me, I don't know if I'm ever going to see you again. I don't know if I'm going to see you tomorrow or anyone tomorrow.
Totally.
And so why not embrace people with, a 3 to 5, 10-second awkward hug, and let people know that you really appreciate the moment.
And you're present. Yeah.
That's what I try to do. It's what I try to focus on. But and if we're all distant cousins, then why not treat each other that way, the best way possible,
And I didn't mean to launch all the way there, because I'll go right back to ego, so I can scoot us back. Otherwise, we'll go in that direction. But yeah, so I think because all this comparison, I was like, well, if I were comparing myself to a family member, would I feel the same way? And if all these people were on the same side as me because we're all family, would I still feel like I would? Because I've just tried to attack it from a logical perspective of like, how many different ways can I try and diffuse this bomb? And I think there's a lot of keys, and you just unlock tiny pieces of it, and you can just try, piece by piece. And I don't think anyone ever conquers it, but just hopefully I can. As my income went up, it was by proportion to the amount of leverage I was employing.
Really? What of these four were you leveraging the most?
So in the beginning, I had no leverage because I was an employee, right? I was using my own time. The next thing that I started doing was I became self-employed, right? So I had a little online training business that I started in between quitting my job and starting the gym.